Are you also streaming?
Yeah, I just started it.
Dope. All right.
I have a very weird setup. Um, have to improve on it in the future. But anyway,
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Anivision podcast. I am Steve and I am joined by fellow hosts Amaro
What's up?
and Jero.
hey, what's up?
And he is streaming this with video. So if you actually want to go see this, you can follow him. I'll make sure I include some links. Or I guess Jero will, since he's probably going to be the one
Yeah.
editing.
Mm-hmm.
Give you
Yeah.
some links to actually see it. He's the only one with video. Both Armor and I have very shitty webcams, and you don't want to see them.
Yeah.
I could just take a still frame picture or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um,
This is my way of peer pressuring these guys into doing something.
yeah. Now I have to stare at Jero while we do this podcast, so it's going to be a little bit more awkward. Um, anyway,
Do
so
people really? Do people really want to look at our faces?
yeah. um, so moving on to that, I feel like I could say something and I regret it later. Moving on. So you might have noticed that there was no season preview, and that is, I can't even remember the last time we didn't do a season preview. Let's just say we did it, and it was terrible, and I'm taking full blame for it. And it's just let's just say we tried something new with a new mixer that is going to meet a very rough end, and then next time we do it, it'll be a lot better. So, to make up for that, we are going to talk a little bit about anime a little later, um, and we're going to kind of just give some of our impressions on some of the summer season stuff. But before that, we actually got a lot of stuff we were really curious about talking about because it's been a while. There's been a lot of announcements. Some of this is a little old. So we want to give some of our impressions or some of our opinions or at least kind of talk about it a little bit going forward. But so the first thing we're going to talk about is, of course, I mean, we got to talk about the Activision Blizzard lawsuit going out right now.
Hmm.
I think if you haven't heard about it by now, you're probably don't like listening to the news.
Yeah.
um, but because it's been everywhere, including mainstream news, non-gaming sites. But um, essentially, what had or what is happening is Activision is being sued by California, the actual state itself,
Mm-hmm.
um, based on its quote unquote frat boy workplace culture. Now, this is pretty important because um, being filed by being a suit by California itself, not by some a group of people, shows that there is like a serious problem here. Like
Mm-hmm.
these aren't just you know accusations that can't be backed up. There's a very big history that California itself and its departments have really seen. So it's it's kind of sad and disappointing to hear this because some of the stuff they talk about, like literally employees calling it the Cosby Room, and kind of behavior that like is not like even remotely like hidden or ignored. Like I think a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but like I think often you hear about these kind of cultures and they tend to
Mhm.
be more like, I kind of heard about it, or maybe I'm turning a little bit of blind eye to it. But like the accusations going on with this is like a lot more complicit behavior. I mean, not just between management, which obviously was facilitating a lot of it, but even amongst its regular employees that were pushing off work to females and making
Mhm.
jokes and passing pictures off. Like it's so it's so it's so invasive. Like I don't know how Activision Blizzard is going to go forward. Like I really feel like almost everyone needs to be let go. Like
Hmm.
at any kind of senior level, anyone who was complicit, like because I know peer pressure can be a thing where like, well, I'm just following what everyone else is doing, but there's a level of acceptability where, or culpability actually is a better word here, where you need to realize what you were doing is wrong, and the fact that this ran on for so long too, like they're talking about years this ran on
Mm-hmm.
for. Um, it's just pretty crazy, and really, if it's not something you heard about, I highly recommend looking at because it kind of makes you think. Because like I know most of this was a lot of the reporting was toward the WoW people. But it's one of those things where like I'm playing. I like Overwatch. I'm playing it a lot. I've been playing it recently, and it just makes me
Mm-hmm.
really think like, should I really be playing the new Summer Games thing? I mean, supporting a company that was doing this and like in the response too. Like we didn't really talk about the response. The response was shit. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
no if and or but about that. There was like the first response was kind of denying it, like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about, blah blah blah. The second response was, oh, we're gonna do better. We and like the president himself was sitting there like saying things like, oh, this is not what we need to move forward doing, and he was culpable because literally he's like was protecting the guy in charge, one of the guys that was running the Cosby room, and
Mm-hmm.
like there's even this viral clip running around with the guy, one of the main executives who was charged, um, that showed several years ago at a BlizzCon, a woman came up to him and asked him in the like straight up asked him in a question, like a segment where the audience asked him and says, and she asked him about the sexualization of female characters and whether or not they could stop.
Mm-hmm.
And he laughed it off.
Oh yeah, she
Him,
she had asked like, why do girls always look like they came out of a Victoria's Secret magazine? And his
yeah.
response was like, what magazine would you like them to walk out of?
Yeah, and it's like I'm not going to pretend that we aren't above that. Oh, like, you, new Mercy skin is hot. New Ash skin is great. Like, we're not going to be pretend we're anything
Yeah.
above that. But just when you take it in context of who is doing it and the fact that he literally runs a room called the Cosby Room, and of course the CEO, who was, I believe, one of the people laughing too, kind of laughing it off, um, was saying that, oh yeah, we respect women here,
Do you?
really comes off sour.
Yeah, it does.
Mm-hmm.
So really just unfortunate. It, obviously every industry is affected by this, but it's, I guess being
Mm-hmm.
those of us who are more into the gaming center, like, I know you hear about it all the time, so obviously this is nothing new about women being abused, but just like the level of it at such a major company is
Mm-hmm.
just pathetic.
Yeah, and with Blizzard, we're not really that far removed from the Blitzchung situation where
Hmm.
that guy got suspended for saying "Free Hong Kong" uh, on a post match interview. I was thinking back on on that topic you were talking about, like should I be playing Overwatch? And in my opinion, I feel like with us, like we don't have any relation to Blizzard or know people that worked at Blizzard. I kind of feel like it's not about like morally aligning ourselves with the right company. It's more like, you're not inherently evil if you played a video game, Overwatch or World of Warcraft or anything like that, where I feel like for me, the importance of reading everything about this lawsuit and all the stories and accounts that people that have worked with Blizzard or formerly worked with Blizzard is to like understand the situation, empathize with the people that were affected by it, and learn from it so that if this situation ever happened in our place of work that we would handle it the right way. So that's kind of my
I
thought on that.
No, I think that's brilliant, and I think in reality that kind of attitude, not just with sexual harassment, but I think we can use that a lot with a lot of things. Um, things you might not necessarily consider. You support a company that Apple 100% child labor somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Samsung as well. So two of the biggest phone brands. We know these companies do this thing, and yet we still have this kind of attitude of like, oh, we're gonna buy it because it's the
Yeah.
latest, the greatest. And we might sit there and be judgy when we see the articles, but I think we really need to understand and be aware that this is a part of our culture, and we need to be, as you said, more kind of empathetic toward it,
Mm-hmm.
realize what's right and what's wrong, and not necessarily unfortunately get held up with the should we be supporting this, should we not be supporting this. And I do think there is a level where you have to put the money where your mouth is.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that, like, for instance, if this were to, like, if we're really not hearing any concrete support, like if the CEO doesn't get fired after this or quit, right? And or we hear more stories about this later, then we need to really start considering what should we be supporting. And I do think there's a little bit of a moral, well, not a little bit, but there is a moral obligation there. But I think you're right as well. Just we need to be aware of this in our own lives and our own workplaces too.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, so let's move away from that really serious topic,
Some
and
general
move
game
on
stuff.
to some more light, interesting things. So Game Worldwide Switch Pro was announced, and we call it Switch Pro, but it's not really Switch Pro.
No,
It's
far from it.
Switch the OLED model. So essentially, Nintendo announced that there will be a new Switch. Everyone was kind of expecting that Switch Pro more aspect. But the Switch, the new OLED model will be a 7-inch, have a bigger screen, and it'll be OLED, of course, because it's the OLED model. The dock also has a LAN in it, and it will be $350, and it's going to be coming out on October 8th. So is this something you guys are interested in? Because I mean, ultimately the specs weren't really any different. They also didn't really say they changed the Joy Cons at all. I know Armo
Yeah.
before the podcast was talking about his nice little Joy Con drift there. Um, is this something you guys are interested in though?
My Switch would have to be in
No.
pretty bad shape for me to want to get this. Like
Yeah.
the new screen, like it sounds nice. The LAN port. I mean, you guys know where my Switch is. I'd have to have a LAN running across the bedroom to get there.
Man,
But yeah, nothing really excites me about this.
no. It's one of those things where, like, if I didn't have a Switch, I would definitely get this version. But
Mhm.
as a current Switch owner, it's a big like I really don't care. This wasn't an announcement for me. I play my Switch mostly docked anyway, so the handheld screen doesn't particularly matter to me. And I don't even play my Switch that much to begin with. Like I'll play it whenever there's a big Nintendo exclusive that I particularly care about, like Twilight Princess. No, sorry, Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
Right now, which I've been playing almost exclusively with my Pro controller on my TV, and I just happened to pick it up and notice that, like, the Joy-Con was drifting, and I barely use it. so I wasn't really too excited about the prospect of a new Switch at all.
Yeah, it's one of those
Especially if
things.
they're not going to even fix the most basic problem that this one has.
Yeah. Well, for me, I kind of agree in the fact that I don't see myself needing it. I don't play the Switch very often. I have been playing it a lot in handheld mode, um, with the new Skyward Sword game, but it's one of those things where, like, the original Switch screen. Don't get me wrong, it's not great, but it's 6.2 inches. So this screen is 7 inches, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
significantly larger, in my opinion. And I don't really
Right.
see a super need for it. I do feel like if I played a lot of Switch, yeah, I would probably be wanting to jump on board this. Um, but I just don't see a real need for it. I don't play it enough. I feel like the screen it is the way this, at least what I have on it. I've never really saw it and complained. Now it might be one of those things where it's like, oh, I don't need a 244 hertz monitor, and then you get a PC that can do it, and you're like, holy shit, I can't go back. Um, yeah, I get that, but like, I just don't see myself needing it now. So, I mean, if it had improved hardware and things like that, I might have considered it just simply
Mhm.
because.
Yeah.
But yeah,
if it was the actual Switch Pro, then yeah, I mean, we'd all be. I mean, that's what we want, right? We want eventually the 4K and all that stuff, and
Hmm.
better online functionality, which isn't exactly a hardware thing. Um,
Yeah. But I don't really see Nintendo really ever doing that because it's kind of like the DS and things. Did they ever upgrade those any significant manner other than releasing some models that were bigger and smaller or 2D?
right, yeah.
Like
2DS.
if they release a new model, it will be a new Switch, like Switch 2 or whatever they call it. Like I don't really see it being an actual like upgraded original Switch. So they would try to market as something new, I think. So
Yeah. I just plugged in my Wii U recently, and first of all, it's kind of like impressive, like with the Virtual Console. Like, if you're a person that wants to check out the back catalog of Zelda and Metroid games, for example, it's really good. But holding that big gamepad, it's like really clunky, and it speaks to like thinking
heavier
about the
than the Switch.
Switch, just like how they got it right with that product, like a handheld item that you can dock and play on the TV.
I think
Simple and
when they first
fantastic.
showed off the Wii U, I think that's what everyone thought it was, right?
Yeah.
Everyone thought
Yeah.
that the handheld thing was some kind of thing you could walk away with, play on, and it'd be awesome. But in reality, though, the technology wasn't there at the time the Wii U launched, so I'm not super surprised. But you know, at least with the Switch, it's really nice, and with the advancements in a lot of uh, processors over for mobile. I really am excited to see what the next version is going to get to you, and that brings us perfectly into our next um, topic, which is the Steam Deck. So they announced,
Which is the real Switch Pro.
yes. Valve announced a actual handheld console called the Steam Deck, and they're
Hmm.
going to have three models out for you. There's 399s with 64 gigabyte of eMMC memory, uh, a 256 gigabyte version, which is M.2 memory, and that's for 529. And then for 649, you get a 512 M.2 version. There are also a few other little differences, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong, but the main thing is it's gonna have an AMD Zen 2, a 7-inch LCD screen. It's gonna be 720p. It's gonna have 60 hertz screen. It's gonna have a micro SD slot, so all of them, no matter what size you get, it's going to be expandable.
Hmm.
And the USB-C on it will be dockable, meaning you could have like a little dock that has, LAN. It has monitor output, and you can actually have it playing on your monitor screen. And so it's kind of like in fact, what they called it was like a mini PC. It will come with Steam OS, um, which is, I guess, okay, but you can install Windows on it as well. From what I've been reading, though, SteamOS has gotten a lot better. It's based on Linux, which isn't great for a lot of games. I know I can't remember. I think it's called Lineage. No, there's some system that will allow them to play more Windows games on it by some kind of like emulation. But keep in
Hmm.
mind, it's still emulation, so it's not necessarily going to be the greatest experience in the world. So there will be a little bit of limited Steam library in terms of what's natively run without some kind of emulation running on it. But
Hmm.
again, there's not a lot seen about it. I mean, they let someone go in. I think was it IGN? Um,
Yeah, they
Yes.
had a video.
yeah, IGN. They let them go in and play with it, but obviously that's a very controlled environment. Play these games that we know are going to work exceptionally well. So I will definitely be more curious to see how it runs. The one thing I will say is if you are going to get this, if you go for 399 version, you are screwing yourself.
Yeah,
um, yeah, the eMMC memory is significantly slower than M.2. And I'm not even saying this in like a elitist PC. Oh, you
hmm
have an M.2 solid state, so much more higher performance. It's more of just you already having a Zen 2 processor, and for those who don't know, that is last gen. They're currently on Zen 3. So it is last gen processing, so it's already a little bit limited there. So having the faster storage is going to mean a huge. Top it off with the fact that a lot of modern games are 60 gigabytes.
Yeah.
So if you have to install something on like a little micro SD card, you're talking about even much slower, like even really, really slow speeds.
So is it confirmed you can play games off of that?
They
Anything
said
that's
you could,
okay?
but of
It
course
wouldn't
they
be
didn't.
ideal.
Yeah, they didn't show anyone playing one off of it because, again, you're talking about like differences in speeds of like I think the fastest one can run at like 60 megabyte per second, something like that,
Mm.
and that's I don't even know if that's fast. It's pretty slow. Let's just say you don't want to install games, especially like third party games, or not
Yeah.
third party, you know, major game titles like
Mm-hmm.
Tomb Raider and things like that on
Yeah,
there.
I think you
So
would only put like puzzle games or card games or something like that.
yeah, something
Very
like light,
basic.
like indie games. What are you guys' thoughts on this?
Um, it
I was
sounds.
I was
Go
pretty interested in it.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that it looked pretty interesting for someone who, refuses to buy a new computer. Um, speaking of myself here,
Yeah.
because like they basically said it's a handheld computer, right? And you can play all your Steam games on it. So it has a huge library on day one, that you can purchase. And I already know like a few games I was interested in, like the new Super Robot Wars game is coming out on Steam exclusively in the West, so that's something that I'm gonna have to play on computer somehow,
Hmm.
or import. But computer would be easier. So like I was just looking at it and going like, yeah, this is actually pretty interesting, and it's sold out.
Yeah.
If you didn't pre-order it, you're done.
Yeah. I feel like the way it works though is that you can still put in like a deposit of like
Mm.
$5 on the Steam store, and then they have like an estimated arrival time for you based on when you ordered that.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah. Here's my main thing though. My warning to anyone who wants this: expect it to be like you really manage expectations first off. Like this thing
Mm-hmm.
will be amazing as a handheld game system. Like, if you like, and this is the only reason why I have if I had my camera on, if I had a camera to have on, you'd see me sigh a little bit when Armo talked about it over getting a computer. Like this is not a computer replacement. Like if you're really expecting this to dock and use it as your main computer, you're going to be like, okay, if you're just going to be browsing the web and things, okay, not too bad. But like for gaming on
When
computer,
when I say like it's a handheld computer, like I'm not meaning like in a sense to like replace like a desktop or something. It's just more like in a sense of it's a gaming computer that's more accessible than having to like build a bunch of like buy a bunch of separate
mm-hmm.
components and build your own machine and stuff. It's like
Yeah.
it's PC gaming, but with a console mentality where you just buy the thing and it works.
Yeah. My brother-in-law, he when I told him that this was a thing that was going to be up for pre-order, he was very interested in it, and he eventually did pre-order. And he was telling me a similar thing, that he was thinking about building a new computer, but for what he does in his life and how he's not around his computer all the time, this really makes a lot of sense for him. And also, like, building a computer, kind of weird with, so much trouble still trying to find RTX cards online.
Yeah, that's kind of like the main thing too. I kind of understand that it is a lot harder and it's a lot more expensive now to buy a gaming computer. It has gotten easier, especially if you're buying pre-built or like
Mm,
some kind of OEM builder.
yeah.
Like I think like NZXT will build the computer for you for a certain price. Like those, it's actually a lot easier to get them and get the cards, but they're still pretty reasonable or pretty expensive cards, and there could be still like a month wait or something like that, or a month or two wait.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, you're all right. For accessibility, this is great. but it's still always going to be one of those things where it's like have very big expectations, because I really do feel like some people might sit there and think, oh, I can just go ahead, especially with the Steam, them showing them plug it in and playing it on their monitor. Like, realize you're getting 720p 30 FPS if you're lucky on low settings, playing it on like a large monitor. So, because a lot of the games they were even playing were really targeting about 30 frames per second. And so it is cool, but as I said, if you're like Jero's talking about, to, you know, being mobile,
Mm-hmm.
this is perfect. And I really think if you are a mobile gamer, this will be amazing. So keep that in mind. So all right, let's move on to Pokemon. A couple of Pokemon news. So Unite came out. I don't like MOBA games, so I never touched it. Did either of you two play?
No.
Nope.
It's pretty weird
Wow.
though. It's like Pokemon League of Legends or something.
Too bad. We should have had XCOM.
Yeah, I know he's playing.
He's been, yeah, he's playing a lot. I think it is kind of interesting. I think the main news here at the launch is a lot of people are complaining the monetization of the game is not great, and no one should be surprised. Nintendo has had some issues with monetization as of late, especially so some of their mobile games. Um, I don't know. I feel like it's a free game. Monetization's always going to be rough. The main thing, though, I'm concerned is basically the fact that you can buy stuff that gives you better stats. And like, I can completely agree with high monetization to buy more characters. It's a free game after all. That makes sense. But to be able to actually get like better stat stuff, that to me is where I kind of go, oh, that sucks. But ultimately, this is a launch of a game. Yep.
I was gonna say everything I'm hearing is that it's pay to win, so that's, you know, that to me that kind of kills the fun of the game, no matter what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And as a, oh, as I was just going to mention, it's a launch, so I think there's time to rescue it. All right, let's move on to the next very short but kind of cool news. Netflix is going to be making a live action show. Cool, I guess. I don't know. Netflix has a weird track record, and they like to cancel things.
Yeah.
They're basically a graveyard.
How much do we know? Like, do we know any production
Nothing.
studio? Okay.
I think at this point it's just announced. So cool. I'm curious to see. Live action might be a lot of fun. I think Detective Pikachu was great. I loved it. But it was very limited to what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to see more of a live action kind of them going around. I mean, we also know that they're making a live action One Piece show, right? Still, that's a plan. That's a thing. I think it's a production too.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think the Cowboy Bebop show will come out first, but Pikachu. I mean, or Pokemon live action. It could work if it has. I mean, like a similar, like you said, the Detective Pikachu art style. I'd be okay with that, you know, because like they actually looked like Pokemon, which I think is important. There's that Netflix adaptation meme that everyone goes. They're like manga adaptation, anime adaptation, Netflix adaptation. It always looks awful. Yeah. So if they can nail at least the art style of it, who knows? Maybe it has a chance.
All right, and before we get to our anime, we got one more thing we want to give some quick impressions on, and that is Skyward Sword. As we all been talking about, we've been playing this a lot.
I'm playing it right now.
Yeah, that's why Armor really doesn't want a camera, is because we'll see him playing things in the middle of the podcast. But you know, it's one of those things where I at first I felt like, I never played Skyward Sword. I don't know about you two. Because this is just one I ended up skipping because you needed the Wii. Yeah, you need the little Wii, either the special Wii remotes or the little Wii adapter things, and I never had those.
Yeah. I played some and then just moved on to something else.
The one thing I will say is at first it was a severe learning curve for the camera. Because I first tried it on my TV, And I was like, well, let me just try using a pro controller. And then I was like, I'm not really sure I like this. I'm not getting used to it. And then I was like, let me just grab the little the Joy Cons and I'll try using that. And that kind of worked for a while. But then I don't know. I'm old man, so
Mm-hmm.
wrists were like, ugh. Um,
And you're just constantly doing
That,
this
that
all
was
game for
yeah,
hours.
yeah,
it was the same thing for me too. Like I tried it in motion control for a little while, and then I was like, "Ow, my arms hurt."
yeah.
I just adapted to constantly pushing L to recenter the camera, and then occasionally, uh, or it's ZL to center, and then the L
Mhm.
bumper that you hold to look around, which apparently
Yeah.
that feature wasn't in the original release of Skyward Sword, so that was added for this.
Yeah,
That
yeah, you couldn't control the camera at all in the original.
and that's the thing. I think so. Eventually, I got to the point where I actually started playing this more handheld. Like I'd go watch TV. Like I'm currently subscribed to Apple TV, so I'm like watching Ted Lasso and thing, and got my little Switch in front of me, playing it, and I got really used to just holding L L1 or L whatever the L1 is that kind of
Yeah.
lets you kind of use the right joystick. And then when I ran across an enemy, I let go of it and just pull out my sword. And I
Hmm.
think that to me became very easy to do. I
Hmm.
kind of wish there was a toggle, honestly. Like I really feel like Nintendo missed the chance to just make a option to toggle L whatever so
Yeah.
that you can use the right as a camera like a normal Zelda game camera
Mm-hmm.
kind of feature, and then when you run into combat you can just quickly tap it or maybe hit Z and pull out your sword, and kind of that would have
Well,
been really good.
well, if you think about it, it actually like it makes more sense to hold the L button to use your sword than it does to do the kick because you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly moving the camera, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like only under specific circumstances you're pulling out your sword. So I mean,
Yeah, but
I'm like you. I got used to holding the L button.
the only thing I'd say is Z, or when you use or R,
Oh.
no, I say Z, but
Hmm.
when you're using L, just a regular L trigger to pull out your sword and kind of like focus. Like so, I don't know if I would make it swappable to where you have to hold L to use your sword, but I definitely feel like it would have been nice as a toggle button. I just think
Yeah, yeah.
that would have made most sense. Other than that, though, like once I got used to that, I've like that camera problem I had, like I feel like it went away because once I just got used to holding L, whatever, the
Mm-hmm.
bumper. I'm just gonna call it the left bumper.
Yeah.
When I got used to
It
holding the left bumper, it was just fine.
it is just L. Like that. I know that's like we're used to playing on like Xbox and
Yeah. L1,
PS, PlayStation or
R1.
whatever. Yeah, where it's L1 or right bumper or whatever.
Yeah.
But like Nintendo did it first, and that's why it's just R and L. So everything else is a variation of that.
Yeah. Camera
But
aside, like one of the things I also wanted to mention is because we were talking about this pre-podcast. Um, One of the complaints we had, in fact, we had a topic about it, was the fact that before the game came out, we were complaining the amiibo functionality and how, oh, you basically locked behind a little toy plastic that was going to be impossible to find, um,
yeah.
a really quality of life thing. But I can say like I like the travel you can do in this game. It
Mhm.
doesn't feel like I need that. Like there's enough quick travel. Like if I need to go, there's enough statues that I can get to and get out of.
Yeah. Easily
Um,
Yeah.
get to the sky or
yeah,
whatever. Even after your first run of each of the locations, you can pick your spot to land in.
yeah. So I don't feel like there's any real necessity for it. Yeah, it would be nice. But I don't. Again, I feel like my complaints of that are a little out the window just simply because I don't. I've never sat there and thought to myself, man, I need to just make a waypoint and go to the sky. Like in my opinion,
Hmm.
that would actually make the game a lot easier and a little cheaty because some of the more challenging parts were like some of like the game is not that hard to begin with, to be honest. Um, Not that any Zelda game is truly difficult in my opinion, unless you make it difficult by putting
Playing hero
arbitrary
mode
rules.
or
Yeah. Um, but I just feel like it'd make it so much easier if I could just stop in the middle of a dungeon and go to the sky and make a special waypoint. So I don't know.
Amro, mention what you were saying earlier about like what you can do with it and like your complaint on that. I don't want to steal that quote directly from you.
I forgot.
It was just about like the thing that you could do with the Zelda that's unique and how it's like DLC or something.
Oh, okay, yeah. That like okay, so the Zelda amiibo is it's basically DLC, right? Because it's something that's in the game that you have to pay to unlock, but they attached it to a physical item, which that already makes it more difficult to get, and it's $25, but it's sold out. Like we're in the middle of a pandemic, so everything is scarce,
Mm-hmm.
and scalpers are buying things up harder than they've ever been. And so like you already have a collector's item that is now more scarce than ever, so this mechanic that's in the game, you can't access it because you can't buy the DLC. It's just such a weird concept, right? Like it'd be like Skyrim being like, hey, we have horse armor DLC. It tells you how old we are. But they're like, we have horse armor DLC, but you can't buy it. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
The right now on eBay you can get the Zelda amiibo for a small price of $50.
Ugh,
Oh
yeah,
my
twice.
That does not
gosh,
include
yeah.
shipping.
And I hate that with the Metroid amiibos. Same thing. There's like supposed to be some kind of gameplay benefit with it, and that and the special edition of that game has been constantly selling out.
Yeah, that's to me. It would have been better if it was at least DLC to buy, and then you got it for free if you bought the amiibo. Maybe it's a little more expensive, but you could buy the DLC for like no, the amiibo's what 25. Maybe the DLC is like 10. Um, I don't know. That's just what I think. Again, this more Nintendo things. We're gonna bitch about it, and then they're gonna be
Yeah.
like, "Sorry, we're Nintendo. Deal with it." And we're gonna ignore it next time a new Nintendo game comes out. We're all excited for it.
Nintendo is going to say, we sold out every single amiibo. That's all we care about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you fools will do it again.
I beat the game earlier last week, and I really like the story for Skyward Sword. I think it's really good with like this city in the sky and like the world that's underneath and chasing after Zelda as she's on her own quest with Impa, and that stuff and the dragons and all that stuff is really good. I think one thing about gameplay that I'm not as high on is that there's 3 central locations that you go to: the Farron Woods, Elden Volcano, and Lanayru Mines. And well, at first it's kind of interesting to go back and go to unexplored areas. I feel like as you get further along in the game, things start to feel repetitive and not as enjoyable to be like, okay, I'm going back here for the X amount of time to do this, and I gotta chase after all these tadpoles and all these little fetch questy type of stuff that I feel like kind of pads the amount of time that I spent playing a game.
Oh,
Yeah, it's never good when you suddenly have an escort mission thrust upon you.
I feel like to me, when I think about the world, like story wise, I agree with Jero. Story wise, I'm enjoying it. I'm not nearly as far as he is, um, but obviously because he beat the game. But I think the world seems less interesting. Like if I compare it to the Zelda games, I remember very clearly, Majora's Mask, Legend, Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, Wind Waker, and I feel like I don't remember Twilight Princess's world all that much.
Because it was Ocarina of Time's world.
It was okay. Well then,
I mean, it was pretty much the same thing.
okay. But either way, like I have more fond memories of those worlds and exploring those worlds, and I don't have the same on this. Like I do feel like oh, I'm in the sand place, it just feels uninteresting, or oh, I'm in, the forest, and it just does not feel like as iconic or as interesting as the worlds from previous Zelda games. I do feel like the Link's main town in the sky is somewhat interesting, but I do feel like they didn't do enough with islands to explore in the sky. Like that could have been more interesting, which I
Yeah.
feel like that's what they're going to be doing with the new Breath
Oh
of the
yeah.
Wild game. But you know, I,
Mhm.
the fact that this game didn't really do that, it just feels like the fact that, like, especially if you take a look, think of something like uh, maybe they wanted to not do that because of uh, um, uh, uh, Wind Waker, because of Wind Waker had all those like
Oh
little
yeah.
islands and things, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, well, we already did this on the sea, we don't need to do this in the sky. I
Mhm.
can kind of see that logic, but I still feel like it just feels somewhat missed.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
I
just, the
think.
fact that this game is like how many years older than some of these older games,
Mm-hmm.
even if I ignore Twilight Princess, and yet it's got less of an iconic feeling to the world. Because like obviously we
Mm-hmm.
can ignore Breath of the Wild because that's a much bigger, expansive, newer game,
Yeah.
but even the older games, it's a little weird.
Yeah, I think the sky area of the game could have been much better if it wasn't just like here's a huge area, but here's 15 total islands that are just like the size of a teacup or something. Like it would
Yeah.
have been nicer if they were bigger and like if there were more places closer to like Pumpkin Landing, that that shop that you go into,
Yeah.
that would have been
Mhm.
nice instead of just like okay, I got this goddess cube on the surface. Now I got to go and fly, and it takes too long just to get to this mini island and then open it and maybe get
Like
some rupees
where,
or something.
and the thing is, like, as well, like when you first when what's his face jumps down with Link, um
Bruce.
yeah, when he jumps down with Link and he's like, look at all these trees, all it made me think was, how the hell did they build all those structures in the sky with like no trees? And like what happens when wood breaks up in the sky? Like what do you do?
Mhm.
So I feel like I know it seems stupid, but like a little bit of world building, I don't think they really truly considered when they actually made the game. Like they maybe should have had like
Yeah.
a forest island where they could have had, them cutting down trees, and they could have had little quests there or
Well,
something like
there
that.
is there is that one bamboo island, but yeah, and
Mm,
well, I maybe they don't use wood so much, but it's more stone structures because there's plenty of stones floating in the air. Um, yeah, I mean the world, like I agree that the sky feels like a watered, ironically, watered down version of the sea, in Wind Waker, and really it's like Jero said, it feels like busy work, like going back up into the sky and flying to open up a chest that you could have just as easily unlocked on the ground. Um, it just seems like padding, and that's my only real complaint with Skyward Sword is that there's a lot of padding to it. Um, I feel like you could have probably cut out a few of the later game quests, like once you've gotten the Master Sword, to have to revisit all three areas again for like a third round, it just feels a little bit too much. Um, but I agree with Jero again. Like the story has been really good. Once I got used to the controls, I think the sword controls were actually pretty kind of fun. Like
Mm-hmm.
it every fight kind of feels like a not a puzzle. Girahim feels like a puzzle, right? Those boss fights. I was
Mm-hmm.
terrible during the first fight, and by
oh
the second
God.
time I fought him, yeah, by the second time I fought him, I was like, oh, I understand,
Yeah.
and it was actually super fun. Um, like because by that point I had a lot of hearts, and he got me down from full life to almost dead, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't quite die, but like I was like, yes, like this, like I beat him with my own skill.
Yeah, it's like a
uh,
weird mechanic where the whole idea is like with motion controls, you're supposed to aim in one direction and then
mhm.
attack from the other. But with the control stick, the way you hold it is that you're aiming at your end point and then you're just getting back to it by just like flicking on the right stick to attack them.
Yeah, and it's almost like how enemies hold their weapons in a certain direction. Like so, like if they're holding it to the right,
Mm-hmm.
you have to swing the analog stick to the right to come in from the left. Like it's kind of counterintuitive, but the way I see it is look at their weapon, and it's basically a game of Simon Says, right? Where
Yeah.
if I'm holding it to the right, swing to the right. If I'm holding it up, swing up, because then your sword will go in the right direction.
Yeah. It's still
Um,
swinging at those guys that have the electric sticks, which is still annoying.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is that like there's other ways around it. Like if you pull out your slingshot, you can stun an enemy and then, go up and just spam the swing, instead of spamming a button, you're swinging the, the thing. Or like the plants where you have to slice them in a specific pattern. You can just throw a bomb at them and they explode,
Yeah. When I found that out, I was like, ooh.
You're like, ooh, I will do this now from now. And same thing with the big jelly things. Like, don't slice them, because then it's just you're fighting 4 small versions of it instead. You could just throw a bomb and kill it in one go. So I appreciate that you're incentivized to use your whole arsenal. And once I got the bow and arrow, I was like, I am a sniper. I maxed it out immediately and got the small quiver and maxed that out. So I'm like running around 35 arrows at all times.
So what is the bonus on that? Is it increased damage on the bow?
Increased damage and range.
Okay.
One thing I will say about this game that I think is the best part, and it's something I missed a lot in Breath of the Wild, is just dungeons. Like,
yeah,
in Breath of the Wild, you have those little small dungeons, which I think at first are kind of cool, but when you consider the fact they replace all the big dungeons, it makes you kind of be a little sad, because like those big dungeons are really what are they're iconic to Zelda to begin with. But the fact that like you can like really kind of go through, find out the puzzles and try to figure things out, because like that's the one thing I think Zelda does exceptionally well, maybe not exceptionally, but does well, and is the fact that there are tricks and puzzles that are not they're not like super hard, but they're not like let's just baby feed you the answers all the time. And so you really have to kind of figure certain things out.
How long did it take you guys to figure out that you had to stab the fruit, the water fruit?
That was actually I took like a few minutes, and then I was just like pressing buttons, and I stabbed it. This works.
You know,
have
really
you gotten to that part yet, Steve?
No. But you know what really tricked me up with the stupid laser, the laser ones, the totem poles. Because I was just running away from them. I was like, I have no idea how to deal with this shit. Until I got to a point where I had to actually deal with one. And I'm just like, I'll just swing my sword randomly at it. And I sliced it once. And I was like, oh, cool. And then it got down to the little one. And I was like, fuck, what do I do now? And then I figured
Poke it in the eye.
It's like, oh my god, this is so easy. They're all the same.
Yeah, I know. And then it became like, oh, well, now these are stupidly easy. But but still,
the little flying ones that shoot out the drones at you, and it's so like once you realize it, it's so obvious. It has a big line in the middle of it, right? So you have to cut the thing.
But again, it doesn't.
I did.
It's not so. It's not so. Not like it doesn't tell you right away, so you're not exactly sure. Which again is what I like about Zelda.
Oh, and speaking of that, the game not telling you right away, that was one of the big complaints with the original version of this game, was that Fi would not shut up. And so this version has dramatically cut back on her, interruptions, and they made it so like they made her help optional, and like your sword will glow, and if you feel like it, you can press the down button and she'll talk to you. But like that's I really appreciate that, because half the fun is, like Steve said, figuring it out on your own.
Yeah, and stuff. Hey, you can push the options also and go here. It's like, I just want to play the damn game.
Yeah.
You mentioned Gearhim also. I think he was an interesting like change of pace villain from the usual Ganondorf stuff that we see in so many games, because he's more chatty and more like a bit on the charismatic side. It has some interesting.
He's David Bowie.
Yeah. It has some interesting boss battles toward the end.
All right.
But yeah, my biggest takeaway with this one is I'm upset that people like basically I skipped on it because I didn't have a Wii. And ever since this game came out, people have been like, "Oh, that game was terrible. It's one of the worst ones." Yada yada yada. I'm like actually really enjoying it.
Yeah.
See,
Like yes,
let's be real here. You're
Yeah.
enjoying it, and what are you playing it on?
the Switch.
No, you're playing it with a pro controller. Like,
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
and
Not the waggle.
you bitched about having to use the Joy Cons. You're like, I'm getting tired. So imagine being forced to do that.
Yeah, no, I could see it.
So
It's like it's. I'm glad that we got this remake then.
yeah,
Agreed.
there we go. All right. And to be fair, if this is the worst Zelda game, Zelda's doing pretty damn good.
Right.
So.
Agreed.
All right, so those are our impressions on Skyward Sword. So we will move on to our anime revolver, which is basically a fancy way to do shows. It's nothing really all that special and unique. Essentially, the way we do it is we randomize a list of our names, and then whoever's at the top, they go choose an anime first. We don't really tell each other. And so you might get an anime you pick to talk about first, might get picked by one of the other people. So it kind of gives us a little bit more of a fun, ooh, we don't know what we're going to talk about kind of idea.
Right.
So, Amuro, you're up first. What show do you want to talk about?
Girlfriend.
Ah,
I love this show because it is stupid as hell. So like I feel like we talked about it, during the preview episode, the Lost preview episodes. But so like this may sound to us like we're repeating things, but it's technically the first time you guys are hearing it. I find the show like hilarious because it's so stupid. It's from the same manga as Aho Girl, which is another ridiculous comedy, and this one like it's a harem anime where they drop the pretext of which one will he end up with, and instead he's just like, no, he's going out with both of them, and like the ridiculous stuff that would arise from that, instead of like pretending they're not together, they're just together, and it's gonna be silly. Most recently, have you guys caught up on this one?
I have not.
Okay, so there's a third girl who got introduced, and you would think that she would like immediately become part of the trio, but the joke is that he's like, no, I'm good. I've got two girls. Like I need to take care of these. I don't need a third one. And like,
Oh, look at him being responsible.
I know, right? That's the joke. She's like, how can you be so responsible and yet you're a two-timing asshole? And God, I've been laughing every episode, and I can't wait to see more.
all right. Let me be the dissenting opinion on this. So here's the thing. I liked the first couple episodes. All right. I thought it was pretty funny. By episode 3, I had enough of it. I still sat through it. And then I got through about halfway of episode 4, and I realized, why am I still watching this? And I just kind of dropped it because I did not find it, like, I felt like all the jokes, especially with Saki, got boring. Like, especially when they spent, like, I believe it was episode 3, they spent like the whole episode, or not even the whole episode, it was like part of the episode. It was weird. Where she was like angry and then like upset with him. It was like kind of funny, but then, now you have spent all that time trying to get her back. And I was just like, I'm just not finding this all that funny. And I think it just like that killed it for me. And it was also kind of like,
I thought those were some of the funniest moments, man. Like his attempts to try to get her back and her rejections. When he like Jero, he tried to convince her by giving her like 50,000 yen worth of gacha rolls, and then got 0 4 stars.
Again, I wouldn't say it was devoid of things I found amusing, but like the majority of it I just didn't laugh at or find amusing. I just wasn't interested, and like I even found myself, I nodded off once, and I was like, kind of like that to wake my eyes up, because again, Saki as a character I liked at first, Then I felt like she became so one-dimensional of just crank up the volume to 10 and she's always going to yell and punch. And like it can be funny, but like when that's like all you got, that's all the jokes. And the thing is, I'm
That's
not
not.
going to. Here's the thing, I don't want to make it sound like I'm shitting on this. Like I don't want to make it
Yeah.
say. I don't want to make it sound like I think this show is awful. I just think the comedy stopped working for me. And when
I
the
don't know.
comedy
I mean,
stops
like,
working for you, you kind of give up on it.
I get that. Like, humor is definitely subjective.
Mhm.
I don't agree that she's one note, especially like because the episode that you kind of gave up on, like the back half of it was her playing.
That's the
What's that?
that's when I gave up on it. When they started playing the game on the phone. I
Like, I
watched
thought
that
that
whole bit. I watched that whole bit, and I was just like,
I thought that was the
I did not laugh.
funniest crap. I thought it like Nagisa getting shot in the head over and over again. I thought was hilarious, and then the booby streamer, she shows up at the end of the episode. Like I don't know, man. Like to me, the comedy just works, and the new girl has been quite funny. Like she just parks herself in their front yard and is living because when he rejected her, she's like, "I'm going to make you want me because I'm such a great girl." And so she becomes a hobo on his front yard.
So does she like have a tent or something, or?
Yes, she has a tent, and then like she didn't really think it through, so she only had a tent, and she basically orders a bunch of shit off of Amazon, but like she has to wait for it to get there, so she like basically has to stream throughout the night to like wait for the stuff to get there because she's freezing. So she uses workouts
Mm.
Okay.
that all accentuate her boobs, right? to warm up throughout the night. So like literally all night long she's out there doing like push-ups and squats and crap, and I thought it was hilarious.
Mm. Well, as I said, I don't think it's terrible. I just it stopped clicking with me. So I'm just I feel like it's just one of those things where I'd rather give up on it instead of keep trying to force myself to watch it and then kind of regret it later. I feel like I got other things I could do
Yeah.
or shows I could
Yeah.
devote to. So
I might want to catch up with this. Sounds
All
pretty
right.
fun.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to me. I'm next. What show I will talk about? In fact, I'm going to talk about a show that I do find really continually funny, and that's Moonlit Fantasy or Tsukimichi Moonlit
That was
Fantasy.
that was
Um,
my second choice.
That was gonna be my first. Yeah.
so I was trying to pick one Jero wouldn't pick, because I know he's not watching as many.
Yeah. Can you pick
I-
something else?
All right, I'll pick Sunny Boy. How about that?
All right. I'm curious
Um,
about this. I haven't watched, but I like.
All
the
right,
first episode.
perfect. So Sunny Boy, this to me is one of the most fascinating shows on right now. I don't want to necessarily pretend it's like amazing, but like just the world they're building, the characters in it, and kind of these abilities and kind of circumstances they run into, absolutely fascinating. And so, for those who don't know or haven't watched Sunny Boy yet, the whole concept is like a school building was transported into another world, and all the kids inside the school, which were all like uh summer, this was like during the summer, so it wasn't like a full school of kids, but all the kids in there start having, well, not all of them, but a good majority of them start having these weird powers. And like the first episode, they're in this big blank black space, and then at the end of the episode they get to an island. And so the next two episodes is kind of them on the island exploring it, showing off their powers, and kind of discovering the rules of the world. And that's one of the big kind of interesting things. It's because it's a lot like, Lord of the Flies, but they all have magical powers. The idea that they're kids on an island and are having to create their own structure of government, like they create their own coin because I don't want to reveal too much, but they had to create their own economy because of certain things that were going on, because the rule of the island was you had to do it this way.
Yeah.
And it's very to me it's just super fascinating. Like in the third episode they spend a lot of the time kind of going to other worlds and discovering that there are other points and they can kind of go to them and discover the rules of these worlds. And like this I will spoil, like in the beginning of the episode they go into the toilet and it transports them into this like aqua world with this giant monster that's trying to like kill them, and he's like, oh, and he has to escape. And so it's just like, again, this kind of this fascinating world with all these different characters that all have different abilities. And like the main character, Nagara, who's like kind of like this guy who doesn't really speak all that much, kind of doesn't express his opinion. Um, he like they discover he might have this power to go to other worlds. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like he doesn't have a power, and everyone's like, he has a power. We know what it is. um, but like again, it's so fascinating to me, especially watching some of these characters like Mizuho's power. Like so like one of the things we were commenting in the first episode, Jero, because we watched this at your place, or excuse me, at Anivision HQ.
Yeah.
Um, was that like there were all these like Amazon or Amazon, whatever they were, boxes, and that's her power. She can like, well, at least that's what we think is her power. She can order anything, but then I discovered it might be her cat's power. Like I don't know how it quite works. But
Was
yeah,
that in episode 2 or was that in episode 3?
episode 3.
Okay.
Did you
I've only seen up to episode 2 yet.
Oh, okay. But it's well, in episode 2 they discover it's her power. That's the point. She can order things from the other
Right.
world, and it just magically delivers it to them. So
Yeah, we saw that in the first episode too, but they didn't like really explain it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what the show. I think the show has going for it is that it does not exposit. you like you find things out at a very like deliberate pace.
well, see, and that's the thing too. That's what the show kind of is about. It's about it's not just us finding out at a delivered pace. It's about the students trying to figure this out. And
Yeah.
that's what it is. That's what makes it so fascinating, is because you have these characters that are like, we have a lot of shows that things get spoon fed to us. I don't really like it when a show treats me like an idiot. I get that in all cases you're gonna have spoon fed situations to you because it is what it is. But this show, the way it kind of again treats you as like, well, you don't know what's going on because they don't know what's going on, and kind of having that whole thing being discovered is just truly fascinating. And honestly, and I know this is going to get a little bit of a weird kind of parallel feeling to it. It feels a lot like Welcome to the Ezekin, and the idea that when you're watching in this show, it feels different. Like anime tends to have very much patterns, right? You're watching a romance, you're watching isekai, you're watching a comedy, and they all feel like they have these same kind of patterns. But this show definitely feels more unique because it's like these really weird and powers. They're on an island. It's animated very kind of like rotoscope style, but it's not really rotoscope, and it feels like something unique you're watching and different than all the other shows. And that's why I really find it truly like a fascinating show.
Yeah,
it's been interesting.
I was just gonna say that's what I like about at least what I watched of the first episode is like the way it presents the powers in the world is that it made me intrigued to want to basically a lot of what Steve was saying. It made me want to watch more to learn what the world is like and to hear what you've said about these past couple episodes. It makes me more compelled to like watch the episodes tonight instead of just like waiting.
Yeah, when we watched the first episode together, like I know I brought it up. I thought it was a manga adaptation, and we found out it was actually an original anime. So the fact that it's not, we're not going to have manga people online being like, "Oh boy, I can't wait for them to reveal that this happens." It actually kind of makes the mystery of not knowing what's going on a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, and it's being directed by I believe you watched this show, the Aka 13 Territory Inspection Department.
Oh yeah,
Joe?
I love that show. Yeah.
Yeah, it's directed and like it feels like he's doing a lot of the scripting for this work, the guy who did that show. So yeah, maybe something you're even more interested in now that you know that.
Yeah, cool.
So definitely high recommendation for this. And One Punch Man. He also directed the first season of One Punch Man. We all know how. Yeah.
Oh.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm really enjoying this one. I think if it's one that you kind of, and I do get the feeling that some people would watch this and be like, this isn't for me, because it does again, the fact that it is different makes it not feel like anime at times, And honestly,
Yeah, that's the thing is the way characters speak and you know everything, like it's very not anime.
Yeah, it kind of feels a lot like, in my opinion. I know this is gonna sound a little weird, but like a little mid 2000s kind of show, like one of those quirky shows you'd find like Techno Lies or uh, even something like
Lane
what's the
or
one, the weird show that with from Manglobe with the Ergo Proxy. Kind of
yeah.
like that weird kind of vibe. Definitely very unique. So I can kind of see why some people might not like it, but I definitely would give the first couple episodes a shot and just kind of see how it works, how it plays, and then go from there. All right. I guess I'm not sure what you're going to pick, Jero.
Oh
What's your
yeah.
first show?
I'm gonna pick the Mother of Goddess. No. Um, we'll talk about Tsukimichi, Moonlit Fantasy. Um, I am a hater of the isekai genre. I think there's been so much trash isekai that's been released over the years, but this is one of the few series that passes the quality test for me. Um, First of all, it is very funny. Like Tomoe and Mio being like supporting characters in this series. They're really funny, and I like that. Like Mio is just the one that like has this affection for the main character, and then but she still has like her sort of like differences with Tomoe, and they clash heads sometimes, and that's really funny. But the thing that I enjoy most about the isekai element of it is that this character hasn't quickly discarded his past life. Like I think that's what
Yeah.
isekai does very poorly is they show like here's a character that existed in modern day Japan, and then you completely forget about that version of the character as they try to find ways to overpower this new character in a fantasy world. I kind of like how he thinks about like the other world and think like the character that he meets in episode 4
Hmm.
like Renan, like he looks at her as similar to Hasagawa, the girl that they were in the archery club together, and she wanted to ask him out, and he turned her down because he didn't feel like he was good enough. So I kind of like how the series doesn't quickly discard like that past reality that this person was living in, and that there's all these parallels, and even like funny little bits like Tomoe can read his memories and sees like all the stuff from his past life, like all of these Japanese dramas that he enjoyed and stuff like that. Yeah, so just solid isekai stuff all around, surprisingly.
Yeah. Speaking of him not like immediately forgetting or discarding his old life, like he's not. And that's the thing is that like a lot of isekai protagonists are like nobodies who benefit from being transported to another world because they get to
Mm-hmm.
be somebody. Like he wasn't unhappy in his old life, like he was a member of a club and he had a actually family that cared about him, and like we see glimpses of them in the credits, right? Like his sisters and his parents, and
Mhm.
you find out that his parents actually are from the world that he is now currently in. So it
Yeah.
actually, like, you're like, okay, yeah, it makes sense why he was chosen as opposed to some random loser getting
Yeah.
reincarnated. And he's like, and that's the thing is like I made early like comparisons to Konosuba because of his interactions with the goddess and how it's kind of feels like a comedy, but like as the more it goes on, I'm like, it's not like Konosuba because like the characters are actually effective.
Oh,
Like he actually
mhm.
has skills and power, and his harem that's slowly growing like are actually powerful and useful. They're just kind of idiots, like
Mm-hmm.
I think
I go ahead.
the one the comparison to Konosuba, I feel like we should kind of take is it's like Konosuba, but there's more heart. Like Konosuba definitely does have a few of those character heart moments. Um, but I think more often than not, it lies on the comedy. But on this one, it definitely does play a lot more to, when Makoto sees something. that he disagrees with. You know, you could see that
Mm-hmm.
anger, you can see that hatred, and you know, it plays really much more toward the emotional side and an actual real story, unlike
Makoto's actually a
Konosuba.
good. Yeah, Makoto is a good guy.
Mhm.
Kazuma is trash.
Yeah,
So
Mhm.
yeah, like I totally agree with you.
It works for
yeah.
both of them, yeah.
Yeah,
In their
it
way.
does.
Hmm.
It's funny, like with Makoto, that he's really good with the magic abilities. Like you see him in the fight against the Black Spider. Like he's doing some
Mhm.
wild stuff with the magic. The bad thing is that he can't speak with his own kind.
Yeah. So he has to use like little text. Yeah, that I think is pretty funny.
And the fact that he looks like
That's
his
demon
mana
to
is
them.
so overpowering. Yeah, he looks like a monster.
I do love
Which
how they who's like walking through town and like every single person there was beautiful and he's like, does everyone look this good? And then Tomo is just like, no, they're just normal.
he's like, oh, I guess I'm just the ugly one. That's another thing that's kind of funny to me is that they're like people constantly are talking about how ugly he is, and I'm just like, I mean, he looks kind of normal, like like he's not an Ikemen, like he's not a hot
Yeah.
guy, but like maybe he has like beady eyes and he's kind of short, but like ugly. It's informed ugliness, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you see the rest of the world and they're completely different. But see, to be fair, if
Yeah,
everyone in the
yeah.
world looks that good, well, I guess never mind because there are also other monsters and things that could kind of relate him to. So,
Yeah. That's the thing. He's making like a coalition of monsters, so that almost kind of leads me to think that less he's going to be less of a hero and more of a anti monster savior kind of
well,
guy.
it makes it kind of a distinction that humans hate monsters. So,
Hmm, hmm.
yeah, we'll have to kind of, and the fact that even like the dwarves were like, we hate the goddess. So, kind of have to curious to see how that plays. All right. I guess we can go and do. We're gonna do a few more shows, but let's try to keep them quick. How about that?
Sure.
So Amro, give us another show. What are you interested in? Actually, you know what?
Duke
No,
of
no, wait,
Death.
wait. Oh,
Blech.
I was thinking of doing the snake draft and having J-Ro go again, but all
Okay.
right, go ahead. Duke of Death.
Um. Yeah. No. Like this is a show that I've been continuing to enjoy. I haven't seen today's episode. Um. As it goes on, like I've seen people kind of like complain about the 3D animation. It doesn't bother me, honestly. I like the central romance in the fact that it's actually a romance. Like the characters have acknowledged that they love each other. The conflict of them not being able to touch each other because of the main character's curse is, I think it's pretty compelling. But they've actually started like introducing more characters and elements. Like, we meet another witch in last week's episode, who was actually like using like real magic and stuff. So like it's pretty fantastical. And there's actually a little bit of a mystery too surrounding Alice's mother. Like my current theory is that she's the one that cast the curse on him.
Wonder if it's a.
Hmm.
You saw the fact that her daughter, he liked her and just like cursed.
Maybe. Or
Yeah.
maybe like it was revenge against her mother or something, like
Maybe.
his mother, I mean.
You
Yeah.
watching this one, Jero?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I really enjoyed like the first two episodes. That's all that I did watch.
Mm.
The CGI stuff, when it applies to just the characters, and it's not ambitious in the way that we've seen a lot of these other CGI animes, like all the stuff that Sanzagen makes, for example, where you can watch that and be critical of the quality of some of that stuff and even the stories that go along with them. But for this, I think like the CGI quality, it's not overly ambitious in that way, and the characters look fine to it in me when I watch, and I really love the main characters and their interactions and the reason why they can't touch each other in the way that we know they desperately want to.
All right. Why don't you go next, Jero, so I don't pick your other one?
Yeah, here's the thing. So, the only show that I caught up on since our preview was Tsukimichi.
Oh,
Um, yeah,
okay.
I'll pick a crappy one. Let's talk about a really crappy one. Battle game in 5 seconds after meeting. Um, Terrible
Oh
title.
my god. It is
And
terrible.
they did not start fighting after 5 seconds. They
Yeah.
were like
Has it-
talking for a while, and then they fought.
Has anyone watched any more of it?
No.
Nah.
I did.
Oh.
I'm current, and it's fucking stupid, and I love it.
So what's been going on?
It's- So the second episode focused on Yuri, the main female character. It was like a flashback episode where we got to see her, past and abusive, like her negligent mother and like this abusive asshole that she was dating and stuff like that.
Very original.
And yeah, it's very super original. But then like her fight was against like this perverted old man who immediately took his shorts off and was just fighting her butt naked from the waist down. And his power was that he could tell someone's state of mind by their scent, which I'm like, how does
Why
that
did he
help
use
you in
pants
any
off?
way? I don't know, man.
I thought it was going to be like,
And,
I could whip my dick out and shoot people.
No, his whole thing was just I'm a pervert who like gets off on beating up women, and her power ends up being that she can multiply her physical abilities 5 times, which kind of simple, but in effect it was pretty cool.
Smelling someone's state of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
and
makes it
then
good in poker. Not in
and
a
then
fight.
the next episode they were like the cliffhanger for episode 2 was the next thing is going to be a team fight, and I was like really already. And the twist was that like it wasn't actually a team fight, it was going to be one-on-one matches, so like they revealed their abilities to each other.
So they have their own tournament arc.
Yes, they're in the middle of a tournament arc in episode 3 already, and it's amazing. Like one dude's power was I can make myself invincible for 2 seconds.
2 seconds?
And yeah, 2
Can he
seconds.
Can he keep doing it, or is it just like one time?
Maybe there's a cooldown in between. I don't know. He didn't get a chance to fight because yeah, like the person he fought, like it's one of those things where like the person you're fighting isn't an indication of like what their ability is, right? So the girl he went up against just was like a shy schoolgirl type, and she immediately forfeited the match. And like you're like, what happened? And her power is that she can copy other people's abilities. And she was like, to her team, she was like, my skill, nothing happened when I copied it, so he doesn't have a skill that I can copy, right? But like it turns out that her actual ability is to copy anyone's ability at like a fraction of its strength. So she's like, if if I had copied his ability, I would have been invincible for 0.2 seconds. So I just immediately forfeited. And then you remember the guy he fought in the first episode whose power was I could turn a stick into a sword.
Yeah.
It turns out that so it's not just a regular sword, right? Because like that would have been too stupid. Like I remember saying
It's
that
too
like
stupid a thing in a show that a power is I can smell someone's state of mind.
I mean, it would have been like it's stupid. It's not really a power if it's just a sword, because like then you have the same power of anyone who's holding a sword, right? Like that's just a weapon. It turns out that the sword can cut through literally anything. So that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's more like it's one of those things where like I don't want to really compare it to Sunny Boy because Sunny Boy's a good anime with like artistic integrity. But like part of the gimmick of the show is like learning these people's abilities and them not giving everyone all the information at once and stuff. So it's trash, and I admit it's trash, but I've been enjoying it.
Yeah. Sounds like if it were a hentai, instead of turning your arm into a cannon, that dude that was waist down turned his cock into a cannon.
I've seen that one before.
Yeah. So the thing I'm confused is, so main character had an ability that he can copy what he can make his power what people think it is, and then the other girl has the ability to copy that power.
So maybe they have to know it's that ability. I mean, I don't know. That makes no sense.
It's weird rules.
Yeah, it's all about weird rules. Like that's literally the whole gimmick of the show.
Yeah.
Like his power is my power is what you think my power is, right? So like in the third episode, he's thinking like, but who does that apply to? Is it only against my opponent? Like if my teammates think that I have a cannon power, does that count for it to activate or whatever? So I'm looking forward to seeing episode 4 where he actually goes up against somebody. Because the teaser already kind of like showed him like failing to activate the cannon or whatever. So I was like, ooh, I wonder what this is going to be about.
Time to
Do you
adapt.
really wonder?
I do.
He
I
does
do.
now.
I cannot wait.
Report back on this.
I will keep you guys abreast of this trash show.
All right. Final show I will talk about is Remake Our Life. Are anyone caught up or watching this one? I know Jared's not.
I've
should I say?
only seen
Nah.
the first episode.
Okay. Well, here's so I'm gonna go on a little bit of a small rant on this show, because, like, okay, the concept of the show is very standard, right? You know, guy goes back in time and decides he's gonna do things differently because he's tired of his mediocre life and the decisions he made to go to a business school instead of an art school. The thing about this show that irritated me at first was, you know, they were hinting at this elite four or whatever they called them, elites, some kind of
Platinum
age.
generation.
platinum generation, yeah. And you knew immediately that he was roommating with the platinum generation. On top of that, like, you know, like one of the people he married was an artist. You knew, oh, that's totally one of her. And they revealed that fairly quickly, which was nice. But then they spent 2 episodes on Nanako and her becoming a singer. When you remember episode 1, he was listening to the amazing singer in @NA, you know, Nana. So it was like one of those things where it was like, well, of course, Nana is just Nanako. Like there's no mystery there. But the thing that bugs me is once they finally revealed that he was like, and this is, I don't want to call this show like treating me like I'm stupid. So I feel like there's some shows that definitely treat you like you're stupid. This show, I think, thought high of itself too much. Like, because like when he revealed it, like the main character Kyoya was like, "I know who you are. You're Nana." Like in this like confident like, "Oh, you didn't know this." Kind of like, "Oh, I bet you didn't see this coming." And it was just kind of like one of those like, "No shit." Right? You know, so I feel like this was less of a show treating me like I'm an idiot and more of like a it just thought itself was clever when it wasn't. The thing that's really bugging me about this show, though, is that the whole trick of going back in time, right? It's much more of a setup than it is anything else. Because, like, you feel like him going back in time, there's got to be things about the show. Like, for instance, you take something like Erase, right? Going back in time to save a friend. Same, like, there's always these objectives. Even if you go into, like, mainstream time travel shows like Looper, right? You know, the whole point of him going back was to save the little kid from turning into some evil super villain guy. And
Yeah, like
so,
Steins
like,
Gate or something.
yeah, like there's a premise there. In this show, it feels like the time travel thing is literally just a gimmick. It's there to set it up because, like, there's certain things that you kind of consider. Like, he spends all this time with Nanako trying to teach her to sing, and ultimately, like, what's the point in that when you already know he's 10 years in the future and she's some accomplished singer, right? So he's really not doing anything special back in time because he's not really making someone's lives better, even though he's spending all this time helping Nanako become a good singer when we know she already gets there. Same with Aki, who is the artist chick, right? Because one of her problems is she's not confident. She doesn't know, like, can I show my art to the world? But we already know in the future she's streaming her art and being super popular and famous. So nothing he does really helps her plot. And I don't really feel like Kyoya is really doing anything to make him learn, like, I'm in the past, I'm trying to be something different. It really genuinely feels like this is just, you know, that was the gimmick to get him back, and it's just a school about him going to art, or show about him going to art school.
It's an isekai.
Yeah, essentially, because it doesn't feel like there's any true, like, things going on other than making their lives worse. Because in the most recent episode, him and Aki kiss, and Nanako sees it, and very clearly Nanako likes Akiko, yeah. So he's about to destroy a friendship over himself going into the past and getting romantically involved with them. So that's his accomplishment is breaking up the platinum generation, I guess. So I really feel like I want to see more on this show in the terms of him being from the future. How does this be advantageous? Like, what is him being in the past really changing? And it could be for the negative. Maybe that's the goal, is to make it like, oh my gosh, I did this and I ruined this, even though I know, this in the past was an amazing, like, what if he sat there and got involved in a game or got involved in some production that he used to admire, and then he realized he screwed it up and it destroyed it for the world. Like, again, something like that, something to make the time travel less of a gimmick and more of like, oh, he's really there and affecting this. And it doesn't feel like it's doing it.
It kind of feels like, I mean, maybe this is me giving the show too much credit, but it kind of feels like that's the point, right? Where because his whole thing was he regretted not going to the college because he thought his life would be so much better if he had just made that one decision. And maybe it won't be better, like you said. So maybe that's the lesson he'll take away from it.
I don't know about that. I just feel like they just use the time travel thing because let's just see. Actually, let me see something. This this light novel was originally written in 2017. Yeah, so it was originally written in 2017. When did some of these time travel things come out? I don't know. Maybe this was around the time Erased was getting super popular, and so he was like, let's just use time travel as a gimmick for this. And I feel like that's more of what the decision was for this show. Like, because again, if you take something like I can't think of the name, Tokyo
Revengers.
Revengers, Tokyo Revengers. Like, you take something like that, like, there's a clear purpose there. The time travel serves a purpose, and I feel like, again, I want this show to serve a purpose, because otherwise it's just, again, as I said, something about him going back in time. Like, that's it. Like, that was just to set him up to go to college, which they could have just led up to that by saying, oh, hey, look, here's a kid going to college in 2006. Like, that's all they needed to do. So I don't know. I feel like I really want to see more from it.
I mean, okay, yes, I agree with you, but like, there's a fundamental difference between guy going to college for the first time and has a bunch of possibilities, and guy who very regrets his life getting a second chance. Like, it's two completely different things.
Yeah, but again,
I mean,
like,
it's still basically just him going to college.
Here's my problem with that, though. Here's my problem with that, though. And this, maybe I'm just not describing it as well, because so much of the time is spent on the episodes in this context of him helping other people, him being the center, like literally, like, we watched the first episode, and the end of the first episode, they realized they got the wrong camera, right? And they're like, oh crap, we screwed up, we got the wrong camera, what am I going to do? And it wasn't him that did it, it was a different guy. And so he saved the day, right? But to me, it's like so much of the time is spent on him kind of not learning lessons, but helping others. That, again, and maybe this is the fact that we don't have any context here. Like, again, Tokyo Revengers, I can't remember her name, but the girlfriend character dies, the sister dies, right? And so we know he's there to save her, or the whole premise is going back to kind of, again, her fate needs to be changed, but in no way are these characters needing their fates changed, because we already know they're massively successful, right? Like, there's one character, right? Eiko, Kasagawa, the character we did meet in the future, right? Or in the present day, really. The character we did meet, and we know her life and the way it's gone, and the fact that she made this, she finally made it to director of this game, and now she's kind of like, facing trouble. So we have a context of her needing, maybe that she needs to have some sort of change in her path to kind of make her a better character in the future. But again, with Tsuruyaki, who's the writer guy, and Nanako, who's the singer, and Aki, who is the famous artist, like, all these characters are famous in the future. So I don't feel like there's really any super change that needs to be made with them. So
Well, like I said, he could find out that he's actually making their lives worse.
I don't feel like
Um,
that's what
Yeah.
it's doing though.
I feel like,
yeah.
like we talked about with Vivi, like these time travel shows, like things always kind of end up the way that they're supposed to. Like that whole thing was about preventing war, but then the war just kind of happened anyway. Whereas here, maybe it's kind of like, what would it be like if he were in this situation? Maybe things didn't break badly for them initially in this past time when they were growing up, but like, how does he, like, what can he make them change for the better or something? Or maybe it's just purely like,
I really feel like it's purely a gimmick to just showcase this guy basically getting a second chance at life.
yeah.
So,
Because my
and
problem
that
in that
yeah.
first episode was that he wasn't an appealing main
Very
character to
interesting.
me.
I can kind of see that he's still kind of that same kind of not very like again I said he's supposedly like he's the ace, you know. In all situations he solves all the problems. He's the guy to go to. So like I feel like that's a little bit boring, especially for a guy from the future. I don't necessarily need him to be a whiny bitch like in Tokyo Revengers, but I do need him to have some sort of personality that would at least feel like, you know, maybe there's more like regret he could have. Like maybe he does something that he's like, oh, I regret it. Like, why am I not doing this? Because this is what I did before and I'm still doing it again. I just don't feel like he's doing that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we'll wait and see. I still like it enough that I'm gonna probably keep watching it. Um, it's just more about me complaining about the gimmick than it is complaining about the show. I still think the show is for what it is about a show of a guy going to art school and kind of the relationship aspects and stuff like that. That's perfectly fine. I just don't understand how time travel really plays any super role at this point, and maybe it will later, but who knows? All right, that will wrap up this episode for us. Thank you for listening. Again, if you wanted to listen to our season preview, rip, because that audio is not good. Maybe we'll come back to some shows that we never talked about. Like there's still some shows I would still very much like to talk about, like Aquatape, and I mean we haven't talked about To Your Eternity in a while, and that show has been consistently great.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff we still need to kind of talk about. So hopefully we'll talk about some of that coming up soon again. Maybe next time we get together we'll have actual audio that works. So do look forward to that.
Yeah.
So
On the subject of like the stream and the video, I'm
yeah.
the Twitch thing. Like I'll try to alert people, but the easiest thing is I'm gonna try to upload these when I do record them to our YouTube channel. So
We do have.
yeah.
I think we've uploaded nothing to it, or did we upload one thing?
There's like one like Towerfall Ascension that we played like probably 10 years ago.
Oh God.
Look out, our
That's a cool
YouTube
game.
subscribers, which probably consists of me and Jero.
Yeah, I think there's like a handful, something like that.
All right, so do look out for that stuff coming soon. Jero will kind of make sure, because he'll be the one editing this, so he'll make sure all the news all that information is on our website. Anivision.org is the place to find it. Maybe we'll also get some links actually in the Facebook group as well, which you can join. So for Amro, for Jero, and for me, Steve, I'll see you next time on the Anivision podcast. Suzuki.
I have things.